After the accident, everything went dark. My body was left behind, but my consciousness floated in a terrifying void. Then I saw something impossible. The end of the world unfolding before me. What I experienced in that moment changed my life forever. But before I tell you, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Continuing. The light turned red and I stopped the car, taking the opportunity to respond to Mia's text on my phone. I was already late for our meeting at Central Park, but New York at 6 in the evening is like that. Almost there, I typed quickly. When I looked up, all I saw was the glare of headlights coming from the right. There wasn't even time to scream. Then came the silence. A silence unlike anything I had ever experienced, dense like mercury, vibrating in my bones. I opened my eyes, and the world had transformed into something my brain refused to process. The sky was no longer the sky. It was a massive crack, as if someone had shattered the very atmosphere. Where Fifth Avenue should have been, there was now a scene straight out of an Escher nightmare. I stood up, or at least I thought I did. My body felt more like a suggestion than something solid. The buildings around me danced a macabre waltz, twisting at impossible angles. The Empire State Building was upside down, its windows blinking like watchful eyes. The Metropolitan Museum floated a few feet above the ground, slowly rotating like a sinister mobile. "This is a dream," I murmured to no one in particular. My voice sounded strange, as if the words were being spoken before my lips moved. That's when I noticed the shadows. They moved at the edges of my vision but froze when I tried to focus on them. I had the unsettling impression that they were studying me, learning my movements. I started walking, if you could call it that. The ground was sometimes solid, sometimes disintegrating into dust beneath my feet before reforming. I passed by people, or what seemed to be people. They were frozen in poses of horror, translucent like poorly tuned holograms. A businessman with his briefcase, mouth open in a silent scream. An old woman hugging a dog, both dissolving into the air as I approached. I had seen many movies and shows about near-death experiences, but nothing compared to this. This was different, too real, too unreal. Have you ever had the feeling that the reality we know is just a thin layer over something much vaster and incomprehensible? Well, I was diving into that something. The voices started subtly, distorted echoes that seemed to come from all directions. Some sounded familiar. I was sure I recognized my mother's laugh, my father's call, but every time I tried to grasp a specific memory, it slipped away like water through my fingers. That's when I saw my reflection in a shattered storefront. Except it wasn't quite me. The figure in the glass had my features, but its eyes. Where eyes should have been, there was only darkness. And as I watched in horror, the reflection's mouth moved, whispering words that hadn't yet left my lips. Has anyone ever experienced something like this? Because I swear every second in that place distorted my sense of reality even more, and the worst was yet to come. But I think I need a moment to process before continuing. If you're curious, to know what happened next, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next chapter. And tell me in the comments, what would you do if your reflection started acting on its own? Sometimes I think I'm going crazy just remembering, but I need to share this story with someone who might understand. As I tried to move away from the distorted reflection, I noticed that time worked strangely there. My footsteps echoed before my feet touched the ground, as if the sound were out of sync with reality. Fifth Avenue folded in on itself, creating an impossible maze of twisted buildings and sidewalks that rose into the air. At some point, I can't say how much time had passed because seconds behaved like modeling clay there, I noticed I wasn't alone. There was a figure following me, always keeping the same distance. At first, I thought it was just another one of those frozen holograms, but this one moved. And the more I looked, the more familiar it seemed. It was Mia, or rather something wearing her form like a poorly fitted mask. The curly hair I loved so much floated as if underwater, and her skin... Man, her skin seemed to be dissolving at the edges, like a photograph being consumed by acid. But the worst were the eyes, two slits of pure void that seemed to suck in all the light around them. "You're late, Ryan," she said. her voice sounding like multiple versions of her, speaking at different moments in time, some words arriving before others. Always late, always distracted, always looking at that screen. I tried to back away, but the ground beneath my feet began to fragment, revealing an endless abyss. Have you ever had that nightmare where you're falling? Now imagine that nightmare, but knowing you're awake, how would you react? "I'm not the one who's late," I managed to say, my voice trembling. "This isn't real. It's just a hallucination." From the accident, the thing that looked like Mia tilted its head at an impossible angle, almost completing a full circle. Real? What is real, Ryan? That life you were living, always running, always putting things off? Or this, where you're finally paying attention? The cracked sky above began to move, the fractures multiplying like spider webs spreading across a windshield. Each new pattern revealed a different version of reality. In some, I was in the car typing the message. In others, I was crossing the street. In others still, I was at home deciding not to go out. All of them ended in the same place, here. That's when I noticed something even more disturbing. My hands were starting to become transparent. It was as if my existence were dissolving, pixel by pixel. I tried to hold on to memories, the smell of breakfast at my mom's house, the sound of my dad's laugh, the touch of Mia's hand. But each memory felt distant, as if it belonged to someone else. The figure of Mia approached, each step leaving ripples in the air as if reality itself were a pool through which she walked. You still don't understand, do you? This isn't a near-death experience, Ryan. This is what has always been here, hidden behind that thin layer you called reality. You know that moment when a truth hits you so hard you almost lose your balance? If you've ever had a revelation like that, tell me in the comments, because what I discovered next changed everything I thought I knew about reality. And if you're as anxious as I was in that moment to understand what's happening, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Believe me, what comes next will make you question every second of your own existence. It was as if 1,000 doors opened in my mind at once. Every memory, every moment of my life began to unfold like a sped-up film, but with one crucial detail I had never noticed before. The cracks had always been there, in the corners of my eyes, in the shadows between one thought and the next, in moments of distraction when the world seemed slightly off. You always knew. The thing wearing Mia's face continued. All those times, you felt something was out of place. The déjà vu in the office elevator, the dream that felt more real than reality, the shadows you swore you saw moving on their own. The Metropolitan Museum, still floating, began to unfold like an impossible origami, revealing other versions of itself. In one, I saw the same scene repeating, me stopped at the light, picking up my phone. But this time, I noticed something I hadn't before. A dark figure in the back seat, watching, waiting. "We're not invaders, Ryan," Mia's voice, now mixed with other voices, some I recognized, others completely alien, echoed. "We're the guardians of the cracks, those who live between one second and the next, ensuring the thin membrane of reality doesn't completely rupture." My legs were almost transparent now, and the sensation was strangely familiar, like that numbness when you wake from a dream so vivid that for a few seconds you don't know what's real. Has that ever happened to you? That moment of total disorientation, where for a fraction of a second you see through the cracks. The accident, I began to say, but the figure interrupted me. There was no accident, Ryan. Not really. You've been having this same revelation for thousands of years, in thousands of different versions of reality. Sometimes it's a car accident, sometimes a fall, sometimes a dream you can't wake up from. But it always leads to this moment, to understanding. The shattered sky began to descend, each fragment reflecting a different version of my life. In some, I was older, in others, younger. In some, I had taken completely different paths. But, in all of them, the cracks were present, patient, waiting. And now, I asked, watching my arms dissolve like smoke in the air, what happens when we understand? Mia's smile, no, the thing that was never Mia, widened impossibly. Now you become part of us, a guardian, watching others through the cracks, maintaining the balance, ensuring the revelation happens at the right moment. And as my consciousness expanded, merging with that impossible reality, I realized I felt no fear. It was like coming home after a long journey. A journey that lasted an entire lifetime, or maybe thousands of them. Now as I watch through the cracks, I see others like me, people on the verge of their own revelation. And I wonder, how many of you, reading this now, have already felt the cracks? How many have seen out of the corner of your eye the true nature of reality? Look around you, observe carefully. Is that shadow in the corner of your room really still? Did your reflection in the mirror move a fraction of a second after you did? Perhaps it's your turn to awaken. Tell me in the comments if you've ever had an inexplicable experience like this, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. After all, you never know when you'll need a guardian of the cracks by your side.